The call came before the tip was refused. That was the part no one in the restaurant noticed. At exactly 8:47 p.m., while crystal glasses clinked and laughter rolled across white linen tables, a woman in a simple black waitress uniform stood quietly beside the bar, holding her phone in both hands. Her thumb hovered over the screen, not shaking, not rushing, calm, almost peaceful. Across the room, seated beneath a chandelier that cost more than her yearly rent, sat Elliot Grayson, CEO of Grayson Dynamics, billionaire by 45, feared by boardrooms, worshipped by investors. Tonight, he thought he was untouchable. He had no idea his career was already ending. Elliot leaned back in his chair, suit jacket unbuttoned, confidence spilling from him like expensive cologne. The men around him laughed too loudly at his jokes. The women smiled just a second longer than necessary. Everyone at the table wanted something from him. Power had that effect on people. "Another round," Elliot said, snapping his fingers without looking up. "The good scotch, not the watered-down garbage." The waitress stepped forward. Her name was Lena Morales. She had served that table for 2 hours without a single mistake. Not one spilled drink. Not one late order. She memorized every preference: who liked their steak medium rare, who hated ice, who wanted lemon twisted exactly once. She smiled politely. "Of course, sir." Her voice was steady. It always was. As she turned, Elliot finally looked at her. Really looked. Something about her face made him pause. Not beauty, not fear. Recognition. He frowned slightly, then dismissed it. He met thousands of faces every year. She was just another server. Replaceable. By the time dessert plates were cleared, the mood at the table had shifted. The deal was done. The acquisition finalized. Grayson Dynamics had swallowed another competitor whole. "To dominance," Elliot toasted. "To dominance," the others echoed. Lena returned with the bill, placing it neatly at Elliot's side. Her hands were still, her posture respectful. He glanced at the total and scoffed. "You overcharged us," he said flatly. Lena blinked. "Sir, this," he tapped the receipt, "is incorrect." She leaned closer, scanning the numbers. "No, sir. Everything is accurate. You ordered the reserve." "I know what I ordered," he snapped, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Don't insult my intelligence." The laughter at the table faded. Eyes turned. Lena straightened. "If there's a mistake, I'll happily." "No," Elliot cut in. "What there is incompetence." A hush fell over the room. Lena felt it, the familiar tightening in her chest. The silent judgment. The unspoken expectation that she should apologize, even when she hadn't done anything wrong. She took a breath.
Sir, y assure you.
Elliot stood. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. "I spend more on dinner than you make in a year," he said coldly. "So don't argue with me." Someone at the table shifted uncomfortably. Lena's face burned, but she didn't lower her eyes. "I apologize if you're unhappy," she said calmly. "But the bill is correct." That was when Elliot smiled. Not kindly, not amused. It was the smile he used when he was about to crush someone. "Fine," he said, pulling out his card. "I'll pay." Relief rippled through the room. Then he added casually, cruelly, "And don't expect a tip." The words landed like a slap. Gasps whispered through nearby tables. A woman at the bar shook her head. Someone muttered, "That's harsh." Elliot signed the receipt with a flourish and slid it back toward Lena. "Consider it a lesson," he said. "If you want generosity, earn it." Lena looked down at the paper. $0 written neatly on the tip line. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she smiled. "Thank you, sir," she said softly. She turned and walked away. Elliot scoffed. "Ungrateful," he muttered, sitting back down. "These people don't know their place anymore." But as Lena reached the service hallway, her smile faded. Not into sadness, but into resolve. She reached into her apron and pulled out her phone. The screen lit up with a single contact saved at the top. She tapped it. The line rang once, twice, then I've been waiting for this call, a voice said on the other end. Lena swallowed, eyes glistening. Not with fear, but with relief. It's him, she said quietly. I'm certain now. A pause. Do you have confirmation? She glanced back through the doorway at Elliot Grayson, laughing loudly, completely unaware. Yes, she replied. He just gave it to me himself. Outside, sirens wailed somewhere far away. Inside, Elliot raised his glass again, smiling wide. He had no idea this would be the last night anyone would toast his name. Lena stayed in the service hallway long after the call ended. The sounds of the dining room drifted through the door. Silverware clinking, laughter rising, money moving effortlessly from one pocket to another. The world Elliot Grayson ruled so easily. She leaned her back against the cool wall and closed her eyes. This really him, she thought. For years, the name had lived in her chest like a bruise you learn to hide. Grayson. She had rehearsed this moment 100 different ways. Some ended with shouting, some with tears, some with revenge so sharp it scared her. But this was quieter, and somehow heavier. Lena? A voice whispered. She opened her eyes to see Marcy, another waitress, hovering nervously. Are you okay? He was awful. Lena forced a small smile. I'm fine. Marcy shook her head. You didn't deserve that. Nobody does. I know, Lena said, and she meant it, because this time, for the first time, she really did. Across the restaurant, Elliot Grayson basked in victory. Relax, he told the table, waving off a concerned look from one of his partners. These places need people like us more than we need them. One of the younger executives laughed. You're brutal, Elliot. He smirked. I'm efficient. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. Tonight was about celebration. 5 years earlier, Lena Morales had worn a very different uniform. No apron, no scuffed shoes, just a navy blue blazer and a badge that read Junior Financial Analyst, Grayson Dynamics. She had been 26, nervous, brilliant, and proud. I can't believe you caught that, her supervisor had told her back then, eyes wide as she stared at Lena's screen. Lena remembered her own voice, quiet but certain. I think there's a pattern, she had said. These transactions, they don't add up. They hadn't. Millions of dollars rerouted through shell companies. Numbers disguised as consulting fees. A system built so cleanly it took someone patient to notice. Someone like Lena. You should bring this to Elliot, her supervisor had whispered, and she had. She remembered standing in that same confident man's office, sunlight pouring through glass walls, the city bowing beneath him. Elliot Grayson had listened without interrupting. Then he smiled, the same smile he wore tonight. Ambitious, he'd said, but naive. Within a week, she was fired. Within a month, she was blacklisted. And within a year, her father, who worked for one of Grayson's partner firms, lost his job, his insurance, and eventually his health. You should have stayed quiet, he'd told her once, coughing into a tissue. Some people don't lose. She held his hand when he died. She never forgot who had won. Back in the present, Lena tied her apron with careful hands and returned to the floor. The table had quieted. Dessert plates were gone. Coffee cups half finished. Elliot finally glanced at his phone. 3 missed calls. From a number he didn't recognize. He frowned and stood. Excuse me, he said, stepping away from the table. He answered as he walked toward the restroom hallway. Yes, Mr. Grayson, a calm male voice replied. This is Daniel Cross with the Federal Compliance Office. Elliot stopped walking. I think you have the wrong number, he said sharply. I don't, the voice said. I'm calling to inform you that an inquiry has been reopened regarding Grayson Dynamics offshore transactions from 2019. Elliot laughed once. That case was closed. Yes, Daniel replied. It was. A pause. Until tonight. Silence stretched. Elliot felt a flicker of something unfamiliar. Unease. You don't reopen federal inquiries because of anonymous tips, he said. This is harassment. Daniel's voice didn't change. It wasn't anonymous. Elliot's grip tightened on the phone. Who was it? Someone who worked for you, Daniel said. And someone who finally confirmed your involvement herself. The call ended. Elliot stared at his phone, pulse pounding. Across the room, Lena set down a water glass for another table. Their eyes met, just for a second. This time, Elliot didn't look away first. In the kitchen, Marcy whispered urgently. Lena, that guy, he looks like he's seen a ghost. Lena exhaled slowly. Maybe he just remembered one. She stepped outside into the cool night air and pulled out her phone again. This time, she didn't hesitate. He knows, she said as soon as the line connected. Good, Daniel replied. We're moving fast. Lena swallowed. I'm not doing this to destroy him. I know, he said gently. You're doing it because it's true. She closed her eyes. I just didn't want him to think he could still get away with it, she whispered. Daniel paused. You did the right thing. A long time ago. We're just catching up. Inside the restaurant, Elliot returned to the table pale and distracted. You okay? Someone asked. Fine, he snapped, but his appetite was gone. The room felt smaller, louder, and for the first time in decades, Elliot Grayson felt something he had spent his life avoiding. The sense that the ground beneath him wasn't solid anymore. He glanced toward the kitchen. The waitress was gone, and somehow he knew this wasn't over. Elliot Grayson had always believed panic was for people without leverage. Leverage was power. And power, he told himself as he loosened his tie in the back seat of his car, was something no phone call could take from him. Home, he snapped at the driver. Yes, sir. The city blurred past the tinted windows, but Elliot didn't see it. His mind replayed the call again and again. Reopened. Confirmed. Tonight. Impossible. By the time the car pulled into the driveway of his glass and steel mansion, his phone was vibrating nonstop. One notification, then 10, then dozens. Stock alerts, missed calls, emails marked urgent. He stepped out of the car, pulse accelerating despite his efforts to stay calm. This is just noise, he muttered. That's all it ever is. But deep down, something else whispered. Noise doesn't sound like this. Across town, Lena sat alone on the edge of her bed, shoes still on, phone resting beside her like it might explode. She hadn't gone home right away. She walked 3 miles, letting the night air steady her breathing. Now the silence felt heavier than the restaurant ever had. Her phone buzzed. Daniel Cross. It's starting, he said. She swallowed. How bad? Bad enough that the board requested an emergency meeting at 6 a.m. Her chest tightened. Already? Yes. Investors hate uncertainty more than guilt. Lena nodded slowly, even though he couldn't see her. What do you need from me? For now, Daniel said. Rest. Tomorrow will be loud. She exhaled. I waited 5 years for this. I know, he said gently. Just remember, you don't owe anyone drama. Truth is enough. When the call ended, Lena stared at the ceiling. For the first time since her father's funeral, she cried. Not from sadness, from release. By morning, the headlines were everywhere. Gray's zero-end dynamics under scrutiny after compliance review reopened. Unnamed former employee cooperating with federal investigators. Elliot read them from his kitchen island, jaw clenched, coffee untouched. Sir, his assistant said over the phone, voice trembling. The board is asking for you. Immediately. Tell them I'm on my way. He hung up and grabbed his jacket. As he walked out, his reflection in the glass stopped him. For a split second, he didn't recognize the man staring back. The boardroom was full when Elliot arrived. Too full. Lawyers, advisors, faces he didn't invite. This is ridiculous, he said as he entered. We're discussing rumors. One of the older board members cleared his throat. Elliot, sit down. That tone, that alone made his stomach drop. We've received preliminary findings, another director said, sliding a folder across the table. And they're concerning. Elliot flipped it open. His own signatures stared back at him. Transaction approvals. Dates. Codes. Where did you get this? He demanded. A former analyst retained copies, the lawyer replied. She preserved them legally. Elliot froze. A memory flickered. Steady eyes, calm voice, refusing to back down. The waitress. No, he said sharply. She was dismissed for incompetence. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. According to HR, she was dismissed after reporting irregularities. Silence filled the room. One of the board members spoke quietly. Why wasn't this disclosed to us, Elliot? He felt the walls closing in. Because it was nothing, he snapped. A misunderstanding. Another director leaned forward. Then why did federal compliance reopen the case last night? Elliot didn't answer. Because now he knew. This wasn't random. This was personal. Back at the restaurant, Marcy scrolled through her phone behind the counter, eyes wide. Lena, she whispered when she saw her. Is this about him? Lena hesitated, then nodded. Marcy covered her mouth. Oh my God, you? I didn't plan it like this, Lena said softly. I just told the truth. Marcy hugged her without asking. You're brave, she said. Lena closed her eyes. She didn't feel brave. She felt tired. By noon, Elliot's name was trending. By 1, sponsors were pulling out. By 2, the board voted unanimously to place him on temporary leave. Temporary. That word burned. He stormed out of the building, reporters shouting questions he refused to answer. Mr. Grayson, did you silence whistleblowers? Is it true you retaliated against employees? Who is the former analyst? He shoved past them, heart racing. His phone buzzed again. Unknown number. He answered without thinking. Why are you doing this? He demanded. The line was silent for a moment. Then Lena's voice. I'm not doing anything, she said calmly. I did something 5 years ago. You're just meeting it now. Elliot swallowed hard. You ruined my life. She inhaled slowly. No, I gave you a chance to be honest. You chose not to take it. He wanted to shout, to threaten, but something in her tone stopped him. You humiliated me, she continued. You humiliated my father. And last night, you humiliated yourself. His hands shook. You didn't tip me, she said. But you gave me confirmation. The call ended. Elliot stared at his phone, chest heaving. For the first time, he understood. This wasn't revenge. It was consequence. That night, Lena sat by her window, city lights flickering below. She didn't feel victorious. She felt free. And somewhere across the city, Elliot Grayson sat alone in a dark house, watching the empire he built begin to crumble, brick by brick. Elliot Grayson didn't sleep. He sat in his home office as dawn bled slowly through the glass walls, watching his empire unravel in real time across 3 monitors. Stock prices dipped, stabilized, dipped again. Every dip felt personal. He replayed interviews of talking heads dissecting his legacy, his pattern of retaliation, his culture of fear. Fear. The word stung. I built this, he muttered to the empty room. I earned it. His phone rang. This time he recognized the number. His lawyer. Elliot, she said carefully. You need to stop responding emotionally. I didn't do anything wrong, he snapped. She's lying. There was a pause. She has documents, the lawyer replied. Emails, audio, enough to make a jury uncomfortable. His jaw tightened. Then bury her. Silence. Elliot, she said slowly. That's exactly the mindset they're accusing you of. He slammed the phone down. Across town, Lena sat in a small conference room, hands folded tightly in her lap. Daniel Cross sat across from her, legal team beside him. Once this goes public, Daniel said, you won't be anonymous anymore. Lena nodded. I know. There will be pressure, another woman added gently. Threats, media, offers. Offers, Lena asked. Money, Daniel said. Settlements, non-disclosure agreements. Lena thought of the restaurant floor. The $0 tip. I'm not for sale, she said quietly. Daniel studied her. I know. Elliot paced his office. There has to be a way out, he said to himself. There's always a way. Then it hit him. Control the narrative. By noon, his PR team had drafted a statement. Elliot Grayson regrets any misunderstandings and is committed to transparency. He agreed to a televised interview. The anchors were polite. Too polite. Mr. Grayson, the host said, did you knowingly retaliate against an employee who raised concerns? Elliot smiled carefully. Absolutely not. I empower my employees to speak up. What about the waitress? The host asked. The former analyst? Elliot's smile stiffened. I don't even remember her, he said dismissively. She's confusing correlation with causation. That clip went viral. So did the footage from the restaurant. Someone had filmed the tip refusal. His words, his tone, his face. Public sympathy vanished overnight. Lena watched the clip on her phone, stomach twisting. Marcy squeezed her hand. People finally see him. Lena shook her head. They see what they want to see. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Name your price, a man said. She laughed softly. You already know the answer. You could walk away, he pressed. Comfortable. Safe. She thought of her father's hands, worn and tired. I am safe, she said. That's why I'm doing this. She hung up. Elliot's lawyer called again. They're preparing charges, she said. Financial misconduct, retaliation, obstruction. Elliot felt cold. What about a settlement? They don't want money, she replied. They want accountability. The word echoed. Accountability. He had demanded it from everyone but himself. That evening, Elliot drove back to the restaurant. He didn't know why. Maybe he wanted to see her again, to understand. The place was quieter than before. He spotted Lena near the counter. She noticed him too. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither moved. He approached slowly. I didn't know, he said hoarsely. She tilted her head. You didn't want to. He swallowed. I can fix this. She met his gaze steadily. It's not broken. It's exposed. People were watching now. Elliot lowered his voice. I'm sorry. The word sounded foreign in his mouth. Lena studied him. I believe you're scared, she said. That's not the same thing. She turned away. Elliot stood there, alone, as whispers rippled around him. For the first time, there was no one left to intimidate. Lena's name went public at 7:12 a.m. She didn't see it happen. She was on the bus, standing near the back, one hand gripping the rail, the other holding her phone loosely at her side. The city moved as it always had. People scrolling, people sighing, people staring past one another like ghosts. Then her phone began to vibrate. Once, twice, then again, and again. By the time she looked down, there were 20 missed calls. Texts stacked on top of each other like falling dominoes. Unknown number. You're brave. Unknown number. You ruined a good man's life. Marcy, old coworker, turn on the news. Please. Her chest tightened. She tapped the link. There she was. A photo taken years ago, her badge visible, her name clear. Lena Morales identified as whistleblower in Grayson Dynamics scandal. The bus lurched forward. Lena sat down hard, breath shallow, heart racing. So this is it, she thought. By noon, reporters were outside her apartment. By 1, her landlord called, voice tense. Lena, this attention. It's not good for the building. I understand, she said quietly. I'll be careful. By 2, her phone rang again. Daniel Cross. It's happening fast, he said. Are you safe? Yes, she replied, though she wasn't entirely sure what safe meant anymore. You don't have to speak publicly yet, he added. We can delay. She closed her eyes. No, she said. I won't hide. Across the city, Elliot Grayson watched the same headline from his penthouse. Her name, her face. For the first time, she was no longer an abstract threat. She was real, and people were choosing her. What are they saying about me? He asked his assistant flatly. She hesitated. They're not kind. He waved her off and scrolled himself. Former employees coming forward. Anonymous testimonials. Patterns. A narrative he could no longer control. This isn't fair, he muttered. Yet even as the words left his mouth, something inside him knew. Fairness had never been his concern. Lena stood at the podium that evening, lights blinding, room silent. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the microphone. I'm not here because I wanted attention, she began. Cameras clicked. I'm here because I stayed silent once, and it cost someone I loved everything. Her voice wavered. She steadied it. I didn't make that call because I was angry about a tip, she continued. I made it because truth doesn't expire. A murmur rippled through the crowd. She spoke of numbers, of warnings ignored, of retaliation disguised as procedure. And finally, I don't hate Elliot Grayson, she said softly, but I refuse to protect him. Silence, then applause. Elliot watched the press conference alone. No advisors, no lawyers, just him and the screen. She didn't sound bitter. That was what broke him. The charges came the next morning. Formal, unavoidable. He was summoned to testify. The board voted again. This time, there was no temporary. His resignation letter was drafted without his input. He signed it anyway. His hand shook. Lena returned to the restaurant that night. Marcy hugged her fiercely. You okay? Lena smiled weakly. Ask me tomorrow. As she wiped down tables, a couple approached. The woman pressed something into her hand. A folded bill. Thank you, she whispered. For my daughter. Lena opened it later. It was more than she'd made in tips all week. She cried in the storage room, shoulders shaking. Not from gratitude, but from the weight of being seen. Elliot packed his office in silence. Awards, photos, headlines framed like trophies. He paused at one Businessman of the Year. He took it down. For the first time, there was no one to blame but himself. That night, Lena sat on her bed, phone buzzing softly with messages of support and anger alike. She stared at the ceiling. This is the price, she whispered, and she paid it willingly. The courtroom smelled faintly of old paper and disinfectant. Lena noticed it immediately. She sat in the second row, hands folded in her lap, spine straight, eyes fixed forward. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but their presence lingered anyway. Heavy, invisible, waiting outside the doors. Across the room, Elliot Grayson sat at the defense table. No tailored suit today, no open confidence, just a dark jacket that didn't quite fit the same way anymore. When he looked up and saw her, his expression flickered. Surprise, regret, something else he didn't have a name for. She didn't look away. Mr. Grayson, the prosecutor said calmly, please raise your right hand. Elliot stood. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do, he replied. The words felt heavier than he expected. He sat back down, fingers gripping the edge of the table. Lena's testimony had come earlier. She had walked to the stand alone. No dramatics, no theatrics, just facts. I reported irregularities in March of 2019, she said steadily. Within days, my access was restricted. Within weeks, I was terminated. Why didn't you go public then? The prosecutor asked. She swallowed. Because I was scared. And because my family paid for it. Her voice cracked. Not loudly, but enough. The courtroom listened. Now it was Elliot's turn. Mr. Grayson, the prosecutor said, did you authorize the transfer of funds to the shell companies listed in Exhibit C? Elliot hesitated. His lawyer shifted beside him. I don't recall, he said finally. A murmur rippled. The prosecutor nodded. Let me refresh your memory. Emails appeared on the screen. His words. His instructions. Elliot's throat went dry. That doesn't prove intent, his lawyer interjected. It proves knowledge, the prosecutor replied calmly. Elliot clenched his jaw. Lena watched him carefully. This man had once towered over her life like an immovable wall. Now he looked a human and fragile. Mr. Grayson, the prosecutor continued, did you retaliate against Ms. Morales after she raised concerns? No, Elliot said quickly. She was underperforming. Lena felt heat rise in her chest. Then the next document appeared. An internal memo. Subject line, Morales, handle quietly. Elliot's hands trembled. The courtroom went silent. During recess, Elliot sat alone. His lawyer leaned in. You need to stop deflecting. I built this company, Elliot whispered fiercely. They wouldn't exist without me. And it may not survive you, she replied softly. Across the room, Lena stood near the window. Daniel joined her. You're doing well. She nodded. I didn't come here to win. No, he said. You came here to finish. When court resumed, Elliot was asked one final question. Mr. Grayson, the prosecutor said, why did you refuse to tip Ms. Morales that night? The question surprised everyone. Elliot blinked. That's irrelevant. Answer it, the judge said calmly. Elliot hesitated. Then, I wanted to remind her who had power, he said quietly. A collective breath was sucked from the room. Lena closed her eyes. There it was, the truth stripped bare. The verdict wouldn't come for weeks, but the damage was already done. Outside the courthouse, reporters surged. Lena pushed through, heart pounding. Someone shouted, Do you feel sorry for him? She stopped, turned. I feel sorry for everyone who thought silence was the price of survival, she said. Then she walked away. That evening, Elliot sat alone in his empty house. Boxes stacked, walls bare. He replayed the courtroom in his mind. Her face, her calm, her strength. For the first time, he wondered, what if I had listened? Lena returned home exhausted. She kicked off her shoes and sank onto the couch. Her phone buzzed. A message from Marcy. You changed something today. Lena smiled faintly. I hope so, she whispered. Outside, the city hummed on. Inside, two lives continued, forever altered. One by truth, one by consequence. The waiting was worse than the courtroom. Lena learned that quickly. Weeks passed, slow and heavy, each day stretching longer than the last. The trial dominated the news cycle, but the verdict hadn't come yet, and that limbo settled into her bones. Every morning, she woke up unsure who she was allowed to be now. Waitress, whistleblower, problem. Some days, all three. She returned to the restaurant part-time, mostly to remind herself that life still existed outside headlines. But even there, everything had changed. Customers recognized her. Some smiled, some stared. A few whispered, You're the one, a man said quietly as she poured his coffee. Thank you. She nodded, unsure how to respond. Elliot Grayson woke up each day to silence. No assistant scheduling his life. No meetings. No purpose. He rented a smaller place on the edge of the city after selling the house. The echo of his own footsteps unsettled him. Every morning he checked the news. Every morning his name was still there. He watched clips of Lena's press conference more times than he wanted to admit. She never attacked him. That hurt more than if she had. One afternoon, Lena received a letter. Not an email. A real envelope. She opened it slowly. Inside was a note, handwritten. Ms. Morales, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I only want you to know that I see it now. E.g. She read it twice, then folded it and placed it in a drawer. Not as closure. As evidence of change, maybe. The verdict came on a Tuesday. Lena was at home when her phone rang. Daniel's voice was steady. They found him liable. Her breath caught. On all counts. Yes. She sat down hard. Across the city, Elliot heard the same words in a quiet office. Liable. The word echoed. He closed his eyes. The sentencing would come later, but the career was over. The board issued a final statement. Grayson Dynamics would survive. Without him, That night, Lena walked alone through the city. The lights felt softer, the air lighter. She didn't feel victorious. She felt complete. At the restaurant, Marcy hugged her again. "We should celebrate." Lena smiled faintly. "Maybe tomorrow." As she clocked out, she noticed something left on a table. An envelope, her name written carefully on the front. Inside was a tip, generous, and a note. "You reminded us what integrity looks like." Tears filled her eyes. Elliot watched the sunset from his small apartment balcony. For the first time, no one expected anything from him. He thought of the question the prosecutor asked. Why did you refuse to tip her? He finally knew the answer. Because he was afraid of anyone standing equal. He wasn't anymore. Lena returned home and opened the drawer where she'd placed Elliot's letter. She took it out, read it once more, then placed it back. Some things didn't need responses. Outside, the city moved forward. So did she. The courthouse steps were crowded again. Not frantic like the first hearing. Not hungry like the trial. This crowd was quieter. They had come for an ending. Lena stood near the edge, hands tucked into the sleeves of her coat, breath visible in the cold morning air. She hadn't slept much. Not from fear this time, from memory. Every step that had led her here replayed in her mind. Her father's cough, the email that said access revoked, the restaurant floor, the $0 tip, and the call. Always the call. Inside, Elliot Grayson sat alone on the wooden bench. No legal team at his side anymore. That chapter was done. His hair was grayer than it had been months ago. His shoulders slumped slightly, as if gravity had finally decided to acknowledge him. When Lena entered, he noticed. He didn't look away. Neither did she. For the first time since that night in the restaurant, there was no imbalance between them. Just two people facing the consequences of choices made long ago. The judge entered. Everyone stood. The room settled into stillness. "Mr. Grayson," the judge began, voice measured. "You have been found liable for financial misconduct, retaliation against a whistleblower, and obstruction of internal reporting mechanisms." Each word landed with weight. "This court does not sentence ambition," the judge continued. "It sentences abuse of power." Lena felt her throat tighten. Elliot closed his eyes. The sentence followed. Heavy fines. A permanent ban from holding executive leadership in any public company. Probation. Mandatory restitution to affected employees. When it ended, no one spoke. The gavel struck. It was done. Outside, reporters surged again. Lena avoided them, moving quickly toward the sidewalk. "Ms. Morales," someone called. "Do you feel justice was served?" She paused. "Yes," she said simply. Because it wasn't about punishment. It was about acknowledgement. She walked away before they could ask more. Elliot exited through a side door. The cold hit him sharply. No cameras followed. No questions shouted. That somehow felt worse. He stood there for a long moment, staring at his hands. They looked ordinary now. That evening, Lena sat alone in the restaurant after closing. Marcy wiped down the bar, humming softly. "You okay?" she asked. Lena nodded. "I think I finally am." Marcy smiled. "You ever think about leaving all this behind?" Lena looked around, the familiar scuffed floor, the quiet hum of the fridge. "Sometimes," she said. "But this place didn't break me. It held me together." She tied her apron for the last time that night. Across town, Elliot sat at a small kitchen table in his apartment. He opened his laptop, not to check the news, to write. "Ms. Morales, I won't send this. I know that. But I need to say it anyway. You were right, and I was wrong. Not just legally, humanly." He stared at the words for a long time, then closed the laptop. Some apologies were meant to be lived, not delivered. Weeks later, Lena received a call. From Daniel. "There's something you should know," he said. "What is it?" "Your case triggered a broader review," he replied. "New protections. New policies." She leaned back, stunned. "So, it mattered?" Daniel smiled through the phone. More than you'll ever see. That night, Lena walked home beneath streetlights that felt warmer somehow. She stopped outside the restaurant, looking at the window reflection. For a moment, she saw her younger self, ambitious, hopeful, unaware. "I kept you safe," she whispered. Then she walked on. Elliot volunteered now. Quietly, no press, no speeches, just hours spent doing work no one praised. For the first time, power wasn't the point. 2 lives, 2 endings, 1 truth. And somewhere between a refused tip and a simple phone call, the balance of the world had shifted just enough. Time didn't rush back in after the sentencing. It eased in slowly, like a careful visitor, unsure whether it was welcome yet. For Lena, life didn't suddenly become easier. It became clearer. She still woke early, still tied her apron with the same practiced motion, still carried plates, listened to orders, smiled politely. But the weight she had carried for years, the invisible pressure to stay small, was gone. People treated her differently now, not with pity, with respect, and that was new. One evening, a young woman lingered by the counter long after paying. "Can I ask you something?" she said softly. Lena nodded. "I work in accounting," the woman continued. "I found something wrong. I've been afraid to say anything." Lena studied her face. The fear, the hope tangled together. "What are you afraid of?" Lena asked gently. The woman swallowed. "Losing everything." Lena thought of her father, of the restaurant floor, of the call. "Sometimes," she said, "you lose things anyway. The question is whether you lose yourself with them." The woman nodded, eyes wet. "Thank you," she whispered. When she left, Lena stood still for a long moment. That was when she understood. The story wasn't over. It was multiplying. Elliot Grayson learned to live with quiet. He stocked shelves at a community food bank twice a week. No one there knew his name. No one cared. At first, that terrified him. Then it didn't. One afternoon, a man beside him said casually, "You're good at organizing." Elliot paused. "Thank you," he said. It was the first compliment he'd received in months, and it meant more than any award ever had. Spring came. The restaurant put flowers on the tables again. One evening, a man in a modest suit walked in alone. He chose a corner table, polite, reserved. Lena didn't recognize him at first. She brought water, took his order. When she returned with the bill, he stood. "I'd like to speak to the manager," he said calmly. Marcy tensed. Lena didn't. She nodded. "Of course." The man waited. Then he placed something on the table. A folded note, and a tip, generous, deliberate. Lena opened the note after he left. "I was there that night," it read. "I laughed. I said nothing. Thank you for teaching me not to do that again." Lena pressed the paper to her chest. That night she called Daniel. "I think I'm ready," she said. "For what?" "To move forward," she replied. "Not away. Forward." He smiled through the phone. "You always were." Months later, Lena stood in a small lecture hall. No cameras, no headlines, just a room of students listening. She didn't tell them about the tip. She told them about the choice, about how power reveals itself in small moments, about how silence feels safer until it isn't. When she finished, they applauded, not loudly, but sincerely. That was enough. Elliot watched a news clip one evening. Lena, speaking calmly, teaching, helping. He turned off the TV, sat quietly, and for the first time he smiled, not with pride, but with understanding. On the anniversary of her father's passing, Lena visited the cemetery. She knelt, brushing leaves away. "I didn't fix everything," she said softly, "but I didn't let it continue." The wind moved gently through the trees. She stood, walked away lighter. Back at the restaurant, a little girl tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mom," she whispered, pointing at Lena. "She's the brave one." Lena laughed softly. "No," she said, crouching to the girl's level. "I just made a call." Somewhere between a refusal and a choice, between power and kindness, The world had shifted, not loudly, not dramatically, but permanently. And that was enough. And if you're still here right now, that tells me something. It tells me you don't just watch stories, you feel them. Because this wasn't just about a CEO or a waitress or a tip. It was about what happens when quiet truth finally speaks. And power realizes it can't bully consequences. So if this story moved you even a little, do one small kind thing today. Hold the door. Say thank you. Tip a little extra. You never know whose one moment you're part of. Now here's the important part. Backhand index pointing right. My mom says if this channel doesn't hit 1,000 subscribers soon, I'm banned from telling kindness stories forever. She's serious. She already hid the notebook. So please, like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications before she replaces my storytelling time with chores. And tell me in the comments, what was the moment in this story that hit you the hardest? Because sometimes the smallest actions, a comment, a click, a little kindness, end up changing more than we ever expect. I'll see you in the next story.